Welcome to the podcast. It's the magical holidays. Time for Joe watching 60 Christmas movies in 60 days. Why, you might ask? Because it sounds like a crazy task to be watching 60 Christmas movies in 60 days. It'll be struggle, no I won't lie. By the halfway point I will lose my mind, but with your support I'm gonna be fine. So let's have a blast on this Christmas time. Join me now and let's find out about today's Christmas movie. Was it good or bad? Happy or sad? Is there another dead mom and dad? Let's get to it with no delay. It's your old pal Joe and he's happy to say welcome to Joe watches 60 Christmas movies in 60 days.
How's it going, everybody? It's me, it's your old pal Joe, and welcome to episode 59 of Joe Watches 60 Christmas Movies in 60 Days. This is the penultimate episode of this gosh darn series. Let's bring it home. We're coming around the end of the track. We're going to make it. Before we talk about today's movie, when I say today, it doesn't matter. When I talk about this episode's movie, let's talk about our good friends over at Third Eye Comics. Third Eye Comics, the sponsor and reason for Season 4 of Joe Watches 60 Christmas Movies in 60 Days. If not for them, the series wouldn't have existed. If not for them, I wouldn't have pushed myself and or challenged myself and or cursed myself with this endeavor. So if you're looking to buy something in the world of comics, gaming, music, movies, pop culture, things like that, check them out at one of their stores in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, or check them out at shop.thirdeyecomics.com. That's shop.thirdeyecomics.com. Support them because they sure as heck supported me. Let's talk about today's movie. That's Christmas Time Capsule. We open with a message on the screen saying 10 years ago. We scan over a table filled with things that are going to be placed into a time capsule, including some Christmas cards and a ring. All of these items get stuffed into a time capsule and locked away. On the time capsule was written, "Do not open for a decade." Then we watch a woman review perfume in her living room for a blog or something. Turns out it's for a magazine. This is now the present day. We're 10 years later. This woman is Tiffany, our main character. Her parents call and are so excited she's planning on coming home for Christmas. Unfortunately, her friend James won't be home for Christmas. His tour of duty keeps getting extended. Let's go ahead and set the stage for this. There's her and there's James, and they're childhood best friends, or at least teenage best friends. And he's been overseas serving in the military. I believe overseas. He could have been serving, on American soil. But he's been gone for a long time. And her parents, who, probably think of him like a second child, were excited with the idea that he might be able to visit as well. But unfortunately, he won't be able to. Just then we cut to James. We find out he is actually going home for Christmas. He's also going to be asking, quote, his girl to marry him. The movie kind of makes you think he's going to be asking Tiffany, but as I've already explained, they're just friends. But the movie kind of plays fast and loose with who he's going to be asking. But suffice to say, there's another woman in his life that Tiffany does not know about. When he arrives at Tiffany's place, she is so happy to see him. What a nice surprise. After the first big hug and greeting, he explains that he's ready for more. It's been a long decade for him in serving in the military, and he's grown so much, he thinks he's ready to spend the rest of his life with someone. Tiffany thinks it's about her and says, finally. But then James continues and says, yes, her name is Ashley, and they're in love. The wind instantly leaves Tiffany's sails. We learn that James met her while serving, that her dad is one of his commanding officers. She is not, I don't believe, in the military herself, but has traveled through her whole life with her dad's career as it is. Tiffany tries to get herself together. She finds out James and Ashley have only known each other for 6 months. And yet he's still planning to propose to her on Christmas. Tiffany does not know what to do with herself. She understands, but she asks if he's really sure. Isn't it too soon? He says he is sure. He explains that he needs his grandmother's ring, and well, that's in the time capsule. He didn't know this, though. He says, you did what? He's very upset with Tiffany. I gave you that family heirloom for safekeeping when I enlisted. Why would you do that? She says, well, it's in a safe place. Eventually, James calms down and says, okay, fine. We just need to call your mom and get her to open the time capsule. But then Tiffany says, no, we can't do that. She says it's not possible. She's the only one that can open the time capsule. And he's like, why? Is there some kind of code or something? And she goes, no, it's just there's personal things in there I don't want anybody else to see. He gets even more frustrated with Tiffany. He needs that ring. He says, fine. I know you're planning to go home for Christmas for the holidays. Why don't I go with you? And then we'll get the time capsule and I'll get my ring. Tiffany smiles big when she realizes she'll be on a long trip alone with James. Before they head out, though, he calls his girlfriend to say he's going to be later than expected heading back to the military base. But he'll be there in time for Christmas. Cut to them on the road. Tiffany pulls out a gingerbread spice air freshener she's reviewing for the magazine. He thinks it's disgusting. He also tears it down from the rearview mirror. She starts to play music. He turns it off. He's very grumpy. She wants to be happy because she is happy that she's with her friend who she's in love with. She eventually pulls out a map and says she's been planning this trip for a while. She has stops listed all across the route, and the whole trip is going to take 4 days, which means she'll arrive not too long before Christmas. He loses it for a second. They can't take that long. He has to get back to Ashley. He needs to get there in time to propose. She agrees to shorten the trip by a day. It'll take 3 days instead of 4, but her one demand is that she still gets to make one touristy travel stop. As they continue to drive, she's still cheery as heck and he's still grumpy as heck because how everything's screwing up his plans. Eventually he's annoyed enough to break through her cheery shell, and so she starts to feel bad about what's going on. She decides to ask about Ashley. She's the daughter of one of his commanding officers. She then asks what her sign is, what her astrological sign is. He says he doesn't know. Well, when is her birthday? It's March 20th. Actually, it might be March 22nd. He's not sure. She points out how this means that he's not really ready to propose to her if he doesn't even know her birthday. Plus, okay, is she a dog person or a cat person? He says dog person. She says wrong. Apparently she found her Instagram profile and there's photos of cats on there, so she's actually a cat person. And James is allergic to cats. Tiffany says, look, I just saved your life. He does not play along with these games. She says it's just not long enough to get to know someone. He says it's plenty long enough. He wants to marry Ashley. Well, fine. What do you love about her? She gets it. She gets me. She knows the life. She knows the type of life that we lead. They drive in silence for a bit, and then he feels bad for being too stern. He starts playing a game with her, like a roadside game, like, I don't know, name a thing that starts with the letter S. Name a Christmassy thing that starts with S. That sort of type game that you might play on a road trip. Cut to them at the one stop that Tiffany wanted to make. There's some sort of roadside attraction where you can go and look at alien memorabilia. Think about it like Area 51, I think it is. No, Roswell. That's where they have the alien stuff. So like if you go to Roswell, there's all sorts of alien stuff due to a quote-unquote alien appearance back in the... was it the 40s? The 50s? Anyway, it's sort of like that, but it's like a convention, but it's also permanent. Regardless, they go to this alien roadside attraction. There's all sorts of things you can do there. You can play games. You can buy memorabilia. We see James pick up an ornament that says, "Our first earthly Christmas together." He then asks the woman behind the table to inscribe it to him and Tiffany. I mean, me and Ashley. The woman is like, whoa, that's weird. And he goes, no, it's me and Ashley. Sorry, I just got confused for a second. Tiffany comes over. They realize they're standing under mistletoe. The woman says, you guys better kiss or you're going to have bad luck. They decide to settle for a peck on the cheek. Eventually, James gets his ornament and packs it away. Then Ashley and James finally, Ashley calls, Ashley, James's girlfriend, and James finally explains the nature of his delay. He found out his friend Tiffany was going to drive home for Christmas alone, so he decided to tag along. So he's still lying, but he's being a little bit more honest. He promises to hurry and get back to the base so he can celebrate Christmas with her and her family as soon as he can. Cut to late at night. Tiffany drives while James sleeps in the passenger seat. Jump ahead to the next day. He asks about the time capsule. What's the deal with it? She says she got it the Christmas before he enlisted. He asks what other sort of stuff is in there. She doesn't want to say, just stuff that was important to her back then. She's planning on opening it this Christmas exactly a decade after closing it. We jump to them getting gas. Tiffany calls her mom and tells her the whole story about how she's with James, but also he's going to be engaged soon. Her mom and dad feel really bad for her because they know how much she likes him. We jump to them driving again. It's getting late. They decide to stay at a hotel for the night. They have to share a room, but guess what? Unlike other movies, this movie makes it so they have 2 beds in the room. They don't have to sleep in the same bed. James still hangs a modesty sheet between the 2 beds. They chat for a bit and he decides to ask her a question he's been wondering. Why is she single? He can't remember the last time she dated anyone. She says dating in L.A. where she lives is a nightmare. He accepts her reasoning and doesn't ask any more questions. Eventually, he goes to the bathroom. She decides to snoop through his stuff. She finds a notice of discharge. It turns out he's actually leaving the military service. When he comes back from the bathroom, she admits she saw the paper. He says, yeah, I've decided to leave and apply for a civilian position. No more active duty. He says he's had enough of serving. It's been a long 10 years, 4 tours overseas too. There's still a part of him that feels like he's letting folks down. For example, his girlfriend's dad, who is still enlisted. Tiffany tells him that no matter what, she's sure that he'll make the right decision, whether he decides to stick with being discharged or somehow goes back. I don't know how that's possible, but that's what she says. They say goodnight and sort of share a moment. Before they fall asleep, Tiffany apologizes for the ring issue. He says it's okay. He's glad they got to spend time together. Cut to him sleeping. He has a night terror. Tiffany wakes him up. He's freaked out, but then he's okay. And they don't talk about that again. And I thought that was interesting that they had him have a night terror, which presumably could be attributed to his time in the service. But they don't really bring it up beyond this. And I thought that was just an interesting, I don't know if I think they did it well or they did it poorly. It was just interesting that they included it. So yeah, Tiffany wakes him up. He's freaked out, but then he's okay. She asks if he'd like to watch a movie. He says yes, he's in. It's the middle of the night, by the way. She turns on the TV when some Christmas movie's playing. As they watch, she immediately falls asleep. He keeps watching the movie, though. Cut to the morning. He's doing push-ups as Tiffany wakes up. She sees him on the floor doing his push-ups without a shirt on, and she's like, oh my God, look at his body. They hit the road. As they drive, he asks about her life in L.A. She says it's kind of lonely. He asks why she doesn't move back home. She could work anywhere, like with the job that she has, right? Working for a magazine. Sure, she could. And then he says he has a big question to ask her. Will you be my best man or woman? And for whatever reason, this question throws her so much, she loses control of the car and they plow into a snowbank. He is very mad at her for doing this. She says, yeah, but it was you that dropped a bomb on me. And he goes, dropped a bomb on you? I'm asking if you'll be, my best man. We're supposed to be best friends. Why is that bad? And she says, like, but you don't even know if Ashley's going to say yes. And he's like, why are you being so negative? This is really messed up. And then Tiffany says something like, what do you want from me, to be your third wheel? And she says, no, to be my best friend. Anyway, Tiffany starts feeling bad for the way she's behaving. Cut to them back on the road. They drive in silence. They should arrive in a few hours, though. He tells Tiffany to take a nap. She'll feel better when they arrive. She leans back and thinks to herself as they drive. Cut to them arriving at her parents' place, still mostly quiet. They get out of the car. Inside, Tiffany's parents are so happy to see her and James. But James is ready to hit the road as soon as he can. He needs to he needs to catch the next flight out of town. Tiffany leads James downstairs to where the capsule was stored. But when they arrived in the basement, she finds out her parents have made it a home gym. Where did her mom put all of her stuff? She goes, well, I gave most of it away. It was just old clothes and stuff like that. But I did keep stuff like the time capsule. I'm just not sure where it is. This leaves James and Tiffany to sift through a storage area filled with stuff. They start digging around. Tiffany finds an old invitation to James's 9th birthday party. Then she finds an old photo of them together as kids. Then he finds an old Christmas sweaters that they wore. Basically, it's a whole trip down memory lane for these two. Then James finds a letter that says Tiffany was accepted to some fancy school, but she never mentioned it to James. He figures it out. It was right after his grandmother died, and Tiffany admits that she didn't want to abandon him when he needed her the most. Eventually, they call it a night after a long evening of searching. She offers to let him stay there, but he says a guy he served with that lives nearby, he's going to crash at his place. Later, his girlfriend Ashley calls. Once he updates her, remember she doesn't know about the ring or the time capsule. She asks what's really going on. She suspects there's something else. You were supposed to be here days ago. He says there's just something I need to do before I can leave. He promises to get there as soon as possible, though. Then he meets up with his old pal. He finds out his old pal works at a veteran center. He helps people transition to civilian life. We find out James has a degree in military history. And his buddy says, we're looking for somebody just like that for a position at the veteran center. You should apply. And if you do, I can put a good word in for you. And he's like, well, I'm not sure if I can, though, because, while it sounds good, I'm not sure if my girlfriend wants to get married, I'm not sure she's going to live here in the Midwest. I think they're in the Chicago area, but James will think about the job. Later that night, we see both Tiffany and her dad up late. They chat for a bit, but then James texts to see if Tiffany has had any luck finding the time capsule. No, not yet. Seeing her fret over James leads to her dad telling her the story about how he met her mom. He ultimately says he thinks James left the ring with her because he knew he'd have to come back to her before he married anyone else. Tiffany thinks about this. The next morning, we find out it's Christmas Eve. Tiffany talks to her mom. Her mom asks why Tiffany hasn't told James how she really feels about him. Tiffany says that she's always been worried about losing him. If she tells him that, she likes him more than as a friend, and he doesn't reciprocate, then it could cause a rift in their relationship. You know the score. Her mom says, well, you won't know if you never say anything. Tiffany goes off to keep searching for the ring. Then James arrives. He chats with Tiffany's mom for a bit and then gets roped into helping her bake while Tiffany keeps looking. Then there's a break in the search because Tiffany's parents are in part of some kind of Christmas race. All four of them go over to the race as they wait for the race to start. Tiffany starts to admit her feelings to James, but then James sees his girlfriend Ashley there. Ashley is there. She basically says she didn't want to not spend Christmas with James. James is so happy to see her. Tiffany, much less so. But unfortunately, Ashley doesn't have winter-appropriate clothing. It's cold out. She asks Tiffany if she can take her shopping to get something more appropriate for this frigid temp. While they go shopping, James heads back to the Veterans Center and unspools his problems for his buddy. He says it's weird to have both Tiffany and Ashley around. He explains how he used to have feelings for Tiffany for a very long time ago. Well, no, he doesn't say that. He says he had feelings for a very long time, but it was before. Over time, he learned to push those feelings down, but earlier today, something happened. They had a spark. The guy says, what about Ashley? What about your girlfriend? He says, yeah, but see, the thing is, life with Ashley makes sense. She's in the military. She understands this life. His buddy says, that sort of thing happens to lots of people who move into civilian life. It could be that you're holding on to something from your military service, from your military life, to make civilian life seem less scary. This makes a lot of sense to James. He thinks maybe he doesn't need to propose quite so fast. Maybe he was just trying to rush into things to make life, more orderly for himself. He thanks his buddy for his time and heads off. Over to Tiffany and Ashley. They stop by a coffee shop, but then Ashley realizes she doesn't know what sort of drink to get James. Tiffany helps. This leads to Ashley asking how James and Tiffany became friends. Turns out they were both in detention. She was there for writing a critical review of a teacher's book choice for an assignment, and James was there for defending a first grader from getting bullied. You can see how Ashley feels a bit off-kilter with how much better Tiffany knows James. Ashley says she bets Tiffany has a lot of fun stories from childhood. Tiffany says she sure does, and if Ashley needs anything for the wedding, she's her girl. And Ashley's like, wait, what wedding? Is James going to propose? Is that what this is all about? Is that why he's acting weird? Tiffany acts like she doesn't know. But Ashley is relieved if that's the case. She was feeling so jealous about Tiffany because Tiffany was all James talked about overseas for a while. She thought maybe he wasn't even in love with her. But then there was this big road trip home, and she just got all worried again. But now Ashley's all relieved because he is apparently going to propose to her. Just then James walks up. Tiffany uses this moment to excuse herself, but James chases her down. He tells her he's okay waiting for the ring after all. He thinks he might hold off on proposing for a while. Tiffany says that might be a problem. She may have let slip about his upcoming proposal. James gets really angry. Now he's got to propose. He goes back to Ashley, who mentions she's freezing. She doesn't know how people endure this sort of cold around Christmas. James says, well, it's what makes it feel like Christmas for me. She says she prefers fake trees and a Yule log on the TV, and this causes James to realize they may be really different after all. Maybe they're not such a perfect match. Regardless, he takes her on a tour of the town. Back to Tiffany. She tells her mom everything that happened, including slipping up about the proposal. She really needs to find that ring. Her mom says, look, calm down for a second. I need to show you something. And her mom pulls out the time capsule. Wait, you knew where it was this whole time? Maybe. I just thought maybe if you didn't have it, it would give you guys more time to figure things out. Her mom knows what it feels like to maybe lose the love of your life. She found out her husband, Tiffany's dad, is pre-diabetic. And there was a period over the last year where he was really sick, and they hadn't told Tiffany. But now they've improved their health. They're doing things like running in that race. They've really improved things, but there was a time there where she was really scared, and she didn't want her daughter to go without somebody that she cared for as well. Tiffany's not sure if that's the same, though. James isn't sick. He's just in love. Her mom tries to protest that maybe there's more to it than that, but Tiffany doesn't care. It's what James thinks that matters, and if he thinks he's in love, and if he thinks he wants to propose, well, that's all he can do. Tiffany opens the time capsule and pulls out the ring. We jump ahead to Christmas Eve dinner. Everyone is at Tiffany's parents' house, including Ashley. While sitting at the table, Tiffany texts James to tell him that the ring has been found. While this is going on, Ashley tells the tale of how she and James met. Tiffany wants to have a toast to a very memorable Christmas. Cut to Tiffany sitting outside. James comes to join her. She hands over the ring. He accepts it and asks what Tiffany thinks of Ashley. Ashley said she's lovely, but he wants more. He wants an honest opinion. Tiffany runs off a lot of qualities, includes by saying she loves you, and that's the most important part. She starts to walk away, but James asks what she was going to tell him back at the race before he saw Ashley. You seemed like you were going to tell me something. What was it? Tiffany says she doesn't remember. He doesn't believe her, but he drops the subject. Cut to James and Ashley going somewhere. Tiffany goes looking through the other items that were in her time capsule, and she finds a letter from James that apparently she's never read. Now, this is very confusingly presented in the movie because she finds a letter and opens it. And I think she's read this before. And you're like, well, Joe, why does it matter if she's read it before? Because this is why. It's a letter where James professes his love to Tiffany. He asks Tiffany to let him know if she feels the same. Tiffany finishes reading this letter that she has never read before and thinks to herself. She goes outside and runs into James, who is returning to pick up Ashley's scarf. She admits that Tiffany admits she was looking for James. She admits that she found out that, she says that she's in love with him. And he's like, why are you telling me this now? And she goes, because the timing has never been right and it's soon going to be too late. He says it may already be too late. But Tiffany goes on and on about the things she knows about James and how well she knows him. And he says, fine, if you loved me, if you're in love with me, and if you loved me all this time, why didn't you reply to my letter? And this would be the letter that we just saw her read for the first time. She says, because I put it in the time capsule. Apparently, he had said something like, don't read it right away, or wait a little bit before you read it. And I'm guessing it was one of those things where you give somebody something, but you don't want them to read it while you're still around. So you say, please wait to read this. And then you leave the vicinity and then they read it. Anyway, he said, yeah, but I meant like 10 minutes, not 10 years. Tiffany admits that she knows that's what, she made a mistake by not reading it until now, but she did read it now. Does he still feel the same way? James isn't sure what to say and eventually says, I'm with Ashley now. It's too late. And James walks away. Tiffany cries to herself. Cut to the next day. James walks with Ashley. He asks why she loves him. She runs off a list of qualities of James's. But that's not good enough. Why him? She says she's not sure what to say. He says he has something he wants to tell her. He pulls out a piece of paper and unfolds it. He gives it to her. It's the notice that he's leaving active duty. She asks, wait, when did you decide to do this? And he says, on my last tour. Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you tell me? He says he wanted to surprise her. And she says, did you want to surprise me, or were you afraid to tell me? He admits maybe a little bit of both. She thought that he was happy serving. He says, I was, but I think I want to settle down and set down roots. She says all she knows, though, is a military life. That's what she wants. It's what she wants out of her own life. He's not sure if he can give her that, though. Ashley then takes this response and thinks to herself and says, maybe we're rushing into things a little bit. James agrees. Ashley then adds, she also knows that he's in love with Tiffany, and he's caught off guard by her saying this. Like, wait, you're saying, what are you saying? I know you're in love with Tiffany. I can tell that you two should be together. She says, look, if that's what you want, if you want to be with Tiffany, that's what you should do. James takes a deep breath and says, what about you? Ashley's not sure, but what she does know is she's leaving and she's going to go home. They hug and Ashley leaves. Cut to Tiffany taking down the stockings now that Christmas is over. Cut to James at the Veterans Center thinking to himself. He finds the ornament he got at the alien attraction, the one that was dedicated to him and Ashley. Except when he opens it up, he sees that the woman actually wrote James and Tiffany. And there's a note that says, the subconscious is the key to the heart. And so basically the woman went with what the first thing he said was, which was him and Tiffany. This makes James smile. Cut back to Tiffany. Her mom tells her that she did the right thing by telling him how she felt. Tiffany knows, but it still doesn't feel great right now. Back to James. His buddy comes out. He's at the Veterans Center hanging out. His buddy comes out and asks James what he can help him with. And James says, I need some holiday lights. Cut to Tiffany going to a place that they had mentioned earlier in the movie that both of them liked to go to when they were younger, like a hiding spot, like a spot to get away from it all. It's like in the edge of the forest. Anyway, she goes there and she sees a bench waiting for her, along with the Christmas lights decorating and also a plate of cookies. Then James comes out of hiding and says that Ashley has left. Tiffany says, ask why. He says it's because Tiffany sees him the way that no one else has seen him before. Then he and Tiffany kiss. Oh, also, he said he knew she'd come there. That's the other part, is that he knew she'd come there. Anyway, so they kiss. Then he pulls out the ring and proposes to her. She says yes. He then says he loves her, and she says she loves him. Then they wish each other a Merry Christmas, and they kiss again. The end. Thus ends Christmas Time Capsule. It was fine. It was mostly serious with some really silly parts mixed in, which was kind of caught me off guard. But hey, whatever. It was fine. That's movie 59. MVP of this movie is going to be, who do you think I should pick? I'm going to pick James because I think he did a pretty good job with a really wacky situation because of how the situations that the character found himself in at times. That's it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach me on social media at JOEMOC, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, whatever you'd like. That's about it for now. Talk to you later. Until next time, until the last time, take care.